Hi, everybody. It's Gene Simmons, and you're not, and you're listening to the Potter Than Hell podcast with Steve, BC, BB, and Dylan. But you knew that, didn't you?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Potter Than Hell podcast. This is your last stop on the crazy train of hard rock and heavy metal. So sit back, buckle in, and hang on. Here we go.
Hello there, Potter Than Hellions. Welcome back to the Potter Than Hell podcast. This is Steve, your host, and I'm joined this week by
BC.
And we have our special guest from the great, maybe not so white north, because I don't know if they have a lot of snow up there this year, like we do, like we don't have down here actually this year. We have Mark Anthony K. How are you, my friend?
Good. How you guys doing?
We are good. This is the first that BC and I have recorded together since the Monsters of Rock cruise. And I just actually recorded an episode with Steven and Sunny for the Grown Up Rock podcast with Chris Granza, Sunny, and Steven for the Monsters of Rock cruise wrap-up, which unfortunately BC couldn't make it last night, so he gave me some notes to read, threw in his undying love for Lizzie Borden in the little notes he gave me, so we had a good time. It's so check that out. It's on Grown Up Rock podcast with Steven, Michael, and Sonny Pooney. So check those guys out. Great podcast, and you'll be able to hear yours truly on there. And Chris Granza, that's been on our show several times and was one of our cabin mates for Rage in the Cage on the Monsters of Rock cruise. So definitely check that out. And we will be having our own version of a wrap-up and kind of something a little different next week as well for the Monsters of Rock and Kiss cruise and a Kiss show that we just saw. So Mark, what's new with you, my friend?
Well, I've been working on quite a few things. As you guys know, the vinyl release of the Projekt Gemineye album in the year 3073 Book 1 is imminent. I just picked up a few of the last little pieces needed for it, like the hype sticker I got. I got my download card, my epic-looking download cards that look like passenger flight tickets for a spacecraft. I really love the way they turned out. So people will have that in each of the records. I think people are going to love it. It's like a really cool keepsake as well. And, just making sure all the stuff is on target. Next week I pick up the album covers to sign them and number them and to put in the posters and stuff like that. Just working on some more ideas for songs, starting to slowly think about Book 2, what's going to happen with that. And I've also been working on something else that we'll get to later on.
Cool, very cool. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the download card. Have you seen them, BC?
No.
They're actually cool. They do look like a kind of like a trip ticket that you would print out like at the airport or something for your boarding pass or something like that. Really cool. Definitely going to be like Mark said, a cool keepsake for that. And that's actually what we're here to talk about this evening. We're going to talk about Projekt Gemineye and what everything that's going on with Mark, and we're going to go through the album and stuff. But before we get into that, let's see, what's everybody listening to? Mark, we haven't heard from you in a while, and actually it's kind of weird because I was looking through my Skype thing to see, to pull your number up to Skype you for this episode, and it's been 5 months since you've been on this show. I can't believe it. I don't know where the time went. So that had to be like September, October, or something like that. This is crazy.
Yeah. It was a little while ago, but you're right. The time has flown quite quickly. I didn't think it was that long either, to be quite honest with you. As far as what I'm listening to right now, I'm listening to a bunch of stuff. Earlier this evening, we did a episode, actually the second episode for a new podcast that Julian started called Look, It's Rock and Roll, which basically encompasses all kinds of rock bands, not just Kiss. And we did a special today on Guns N' Roses and the Use Your Illusion albums. And I've been listening to quite a bit of Guns N' Roses just to prep myself for it because I'm familiar with the records, obviously, but just a refresher of it. So that's one of the things I've been listening to. I've also been listening to quite a bit of Gentle Giant of late and some usual Yes music. I'm a big, Yes listener, so I've been listening to that. But, I kind of have cooled off a bit with my Rush. I've been listening to Rush quite a bit since Neil's passing. But that's kind of trailed down a little bit since I've been listening to almost every record, for the last couple of weeks. So,
okay, cool. Yeah, and as you guys out there know, we've had Mark on for our Rush series, and we talked about when Neil Peart passed away real briefly on our podcast, because we figured at that time, Mark, everybody and their uncle that had a podcast was doing some kind of tribute or Rush type show. So I figured we would just kind of keep on doing what we were doing, having our Rush episode every couple months, and we have one coming up with Mark probably a month or so, a couple weeks. And so I didn't want anybody out there to think that we weren't going to do something with that, and we'll include some type of tribute to Neil Peart, but we're going to continue on with our Rush saga with Mark. Excuse me. BC, before I ask you what you're listening to, you went to see British Lion last night, correct?
Correct.
Just give us a quick lowdown on that.
The Chameleon Club? Am I saying
Chameleon
that?
Club, yep.
I've heard about this place, never been there until last night. Like a hole-in-the-wall place, like you're in a back street and you go in the doors and upstairs, and nice setup.
Oh, yeah?
It was a really nice setup. Small, but nice setup. There was an opening band, the Picture Trees. I might be saying it wrong, but it was just a guy, a guitar, and a drummer with no cymbals, and it was just... They came out, and I was kind of like, oh boy, this might be a little too artsy for BC. But by the third song, they won me over. They were cool. It was different. It was different, but cool.
Did they have any music available, like any CDs?
They had LP.
Really?
They had vinyl.
Did you pick it up?
I did not.
Oh, dude.
The
The
person-
at least picked up the CD.
Person in front of me wiped out this stuff.
Oh, really?
Plus, I was only back there when we first got there, so I didn't hear him until after.
Right.
I saw it. I was like, I never
you
heard.
gotta
I never
hear
even heard of
before
them.
you can
Yeah.
buy their stuff, yeah.
But by the end of the show, I kind of went back and they said during the show they were playing New York tonight, so they had to leave right after during British Lion. They said they'd be gone because they have to do some early press in New York City today. So by the time their show was over and I got back in that neck of the woods, their table was gone and everything. But I noticed some people there bought the vinyl, so
That's cool. I'll have to look for those guys.
I don't even know what kind of music you would say it.
Yeah, I don't know, because
The
like
drummer's
bands like
wild.
Royal Blood and stuff like that with the two artists and stuff like that.
Just
it's
guitar and drums, no
crazy.
bass, no. I guess
crazy.
It was bloody crazy.
Yeah. And how was British Lion? Because
British
actually,
Lion-
they were one of the bands that we did not get
We
to
did
catch
not
on the
catch
Monsters
on
of
the
Rock
Rock,
Cruise.
which-
A little preview there.
Because I think I'm glad we didn't catch them on the map. Because I don't know, it seemed like they played for almost an hour, 40 minutes. They played a while, and there was no talking, there was no soloing by anybody. It was just boom, 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 boom. They had to play 15 or more songs.
Cool. So they probably played the bulk of their two albums then.
It was just boom, boom. I was like, wow, they're just. It sounded great. It really sounded great. And the crowd was really into it, which I was surprised, because there are a lot of Iron Maiden shirts. Of course, Steve Harris is in the band, so everybody's going to be going there for Steve Harris. It's got to suck for the rest of the band, because you got to know that everybody's there pretty much to see Steve Harris. But the whole band just fired on those cylinders, I thought. And overall, it was a great show. Like I said, hour and 40 minutes. Crowd was really into it. Steve Harris and most of the band stayed afterwards and met with the fans, and you could get your picture taken, and they signed whatever you wanted to have signed. One of the guys that went with me that's been on the podcast, Jim Polkowski, he had a picture from back in, I want to say 2008, from an Iron Maiden tour of Steve with the bass, and he had him sign it. It was overall very cool. I mean, it was a nice setting, and I was surprised how long they played, and place was into it.
That's cool. Very cool. All right. What are you listening to?
I've been listening to a little of the new Black Swan, which I'm totally loving it. I mean, I kind of I knew I would, but I didn't want to get too pumped up, because sometimes you get too pumped up, then you get it, and it's like, ugh. But I've been totally listening to that, and the new Jorn, Radio Classics 2, I believe it's called. Not bad. I mean, and that's the only two things I've been checking out mainly.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
mainly Black Swan.
Cool. Yeah, and I've been listening to Black Swan as well. Just an amazing band. Robin McCauley, vocals, Reb Beach on guitar, Jeff Pilson on bass, and Matt Starr on drums. Just and you're right, BC. Like, you get a band like that, you're so excited. Like, holy shit, all these guys are great. And sometimes it doesn't work out that great, because I kind of feel that way about the Dirty Shirley album. With George Lynch and that.
I didn't want to say that, but so you brought it up.
It's good.
It's good,
but it's not near as good as Black Swan. And I think
No.
that was my excitement for Dirty Shirley and then the kind of disappointment that I had in it kind of curbed my enthusiasm. Well, there's a show for you. Curbed my enthusiasm for the Black Swan album coming out because I didn't want to be disappointed in that one as well. But that album just blew me away.
Yeah,
that absolutely blew me away.
And what's it? The End Machine, that kind of.
The End Machine.
I was pumped
like,
up for that, and
I know
that came out. It was.
I really think that the band themselves, like Robert Mason, who I absolutely love Robert Mason, but I think they kind of overstated how awesome it was.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you're not going to get out there and say your new band sucks, but you know, you can't put yourself out there as the be all end all band of rock and roll and have it just be a mediocre album. So, so I've been listening to that. I've been listening to some classic Ted Nugent. I've been spinning some of my old vinyl, like albums like Paralyzed, Cat Scratch Fever, State of Shock. I've been checking out. Just like there's a lot of really good deep tracks on those albums. Totally love that. And I've been also binging on Heat since the Monsters of Rock Cruise. A totally amazing band on there. So there's what we're listening to myself. Black Swan, Ted Nugent, and some Heat. Black Swan and some Yorn for BC. Pretty much that's it. Mark's been delving into some Guns N' Roses. They just did an episode on Look, It's Rock and Roll. Mark, we'll get into where we can find all that in a little bit. Mark's been listening to also some Yes, some Gentle Giant, and he's been kind of curbing off on Rush since he's been ODing and binging on Rush for a while there since Neil Peart's passing. So now let's talk some Projekt Gemineye. Let me just throw out there the albums that Mark Anthony Kaye has out with Projekt Gemineye already. 2017, An Ordinary Day. Also later in 2017, A Brand New Day. 2018, Man of Science, Man of Dreams. And 2019, November 1st, I believe it came out. Correct, Mark? Mm-hmm. And it was in the year of 3073, Book 1. And he's had several EPs and singles out in between there. Some Christmas stuff, and like he had a harder, like hard rock type of EP that he put out there as well. So you can check them out on Bandcamp. Very cool music. As a whole, Projekt Gemineye is just kind of a band and the type of music that I've been looking for. It's got all the elements that I like. It's got the heavy guitars, the drums, bass, and it's got that keyboard and the synthesizer all kind of thrown into the blender there, and some really cool vocal harmonies. So just a great project, something nice you could throw on. No skippers. And one thing, Mark, that I always enjoyed about these albums are they're not long albums. It's not like some albums anymore you put on, you would throw the vinyl on or whatever. The vinyl's like 2 or 3 vinyl discs with 4 sides or whatever, and you throw a disc in, it's like 80 minutes long, and you lose attention when something is that long anymore. I think it's tough to listen to an album that is like 14 or 15 songs anymore because there's just so much stuff out there, and it's refreshing to have something that is that kind of intricate music-wise, but not like an hour and a half to get through the whole album. You know what I mean? Give us your thoughts on how, like, what was your process? Was that like an idea going in that you didn't want to go crazy time-wise on these things?
Yeah, that was something that I had in my head from the very beginning of Projekt Gemineye. Is one of the things I enjoyed about the records that I was really in love with, like, Close to the Edge from Yes, or like Caress of Steel by Rush, is that all these records were about 40 to 42 minutes max. Some of them were even like 38 minutes long. And I think that kind of time period is perfect to keep people's attention, just like you said. I mean, the main thing you want people to do when they listen to your music is to pay attention to it and see what they like about it and fall in love with certain aspects of it, or not like it. But you want to give them a fair shake at it by making it, just enough music and time that they actually do devote their attention to it, because there's lots of bands out there, lots of things to do, and people have lots of things to do in their day anyways, right? So it's hard for people to scoop out 80 minutes to listen to a record. So I try to make my records between 38 and 42 minutes long, and I also do that because I wanted from the very beginning to make vinyl releases of it, and I didn't want to go down that avenue of like multiple vinyls for a record. I wanted to have it just a traditional way of one record, side A, side B, and have all the music there. Don't have to skip anything, don't have to cut anything down, and have the record on vinyl the same way you would get it on CD or on digital.
Now, what was there anything in specific that sparked your idea for in the year 3073? And if you would just tell us what sparked that, and then just kind of give our listeners an overview of the story of this, because it's really cool. Because Mark is really good to his supporters. When he has a new album coming out, he sends out like a press kit. But with this one, he sent out this packet. It had the background on the story. It had like kind of like diagrams and stuff. It was really cool, like the way that you did all this stuff. Can you just let us in on how that came about, like the story and characters and all that?
Well, basically, I was kind of just, reminiscing with people that I talked to, my friends and stuff like that, or, you guys and stuff like that, and talk about, different concept records, because we all love concept albums. I know you do, and I know BC likes concept albums as well. And, so I was talking about the fact that some of the concept records that I noticed that are coming out of late always circle around the kind of same storyline. Earth goes through some massive disaster, and they're all, the remaining people who survived it are huddled together and trying to rebuild Earth back to some sort of, civilization. And I always thought, it's such a negative story. I thought to myself, why don't I try to make a story around something more positive? So the whole story behind In the Year 3073 Book 1 is it's about Earth and a group of scientists who believe that Earth is again approaching some sort of big catastrophe. Okay, and that's part of the package that I sent out to all the Projekt Gemini Club supporters that are in my little group here. I sent out a package and I sent them, like reports of like the data they had that showed, that what was going to happen, the disaster, their plan of what they wanted to do and why they were evacuating the Earth. I even gave like a little letter saying that, you're invited to a meeting for, what we're going to do as far as evacuation. Just really try to make the story very detailed, you know what I mean? And give it some sort of a good background, because when, you can only put so much on a CD booklet, right? You can't, it'll be like, 70 pages if I put the whole story in there, right?
It'd take you longer to read it than to listen to it.
Exactly, right? So I wanted to give people a background kit like that they can just, leisurely take their time and flip through it when they had time before they got the record, right? And basically what the story was is that they collected a group of people that they thought would help reform the planet, scientists, maybe some group of athletes that were physically strong that could, have a strong gene pool that they can carry on with, the typical sort of scenario of how to repopulate the Earth, right? And they made a spacecraft and they left Earth. 1,000 years later, because they did that in 2073, 1,000 years later, their ancestors, like their further generations of those people that left and found another planet to live on, their offspring decided that they were going to go back to Earth and see what happened to it and kind of document it for their people. So they go back to Earth and discover, wow, nothing happened to Earth. In fact, it became a living paradise after they left. They got rid of depression and hunger. There was no more homelessness. It was like a complete paradise. That's what I tried to show on the album cover. Like, it turned into this wonderland of like joy and excitement, right? And if you read through the story, it kind of goes through what they discovered when they got back onto Earth. So I don't want to give it away too much for people who haven't gotten the record yet, but it does have a little twist at the end, and that's what Book 2 is going to be for.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a brief background on that. And was there anything specific that like sparked that idea, or was it just you kind of got sick of the gloom and doom of all the concept albums and just wanted to do something different?
Yeah, I think it was more just that I wanted to make it a bit different, because when it was getting to the point now where every time I heard that a metal band or a progressive band, was making a concept record, I always kind of had an idea of what it was going to be. You know what I mean? Like, something's going to happen and they're rebuilding. You know what I mean? It's as far back as, Arion and those bands were doing that, right? So I just thought, why not just keep it positive and make it a totally different story? I thought it would make people more interested in the story after all, that, wow, this is not like the typical sort of storyline.
All right, very, very cool. When you do these albums, is it kind of a set thing that you do? Do you start out with the music, or do you kind of do an outline of lyrics before that? Like how's your thought process go of how you like? Okay, boom, you have the idea for the album. What's like the very first thing you do? Music or lyrics?
Well, for every Projekt Gemineye album except this one, I always just kind of sat down, wrote music, and after I kind of constructed the music and put down, just like a basic bed of like drums, bass, and guitar, I would start working on the lyrics and the vocal melodies and then just finish it off from there. But for this one, I definitely wanted to go in with a finished story concept. I didn't want to kind of do it as I went. I kind of wrote out the whole story, put it down on paper, and then decided, okay, this song is going to talk about this song is going to talk about that. And I kind of wrote around the lyrics for the first time. That's the first time I ever did that. I said, okay, this first song, Let Your Spirit Fly, will be about them coming back to Earth and discovering what they'd missed out for all those thousands of years of this prosperous, planet now. And that's how I kind of wanted to write the music around it, to make it somewhat more uplifting and more positive melodies and stuff like that. Not so much like in the minor key, a little bit more uplifting in a major key.
All right, that is cool, and it's I really like the kind of spin that you have on this type of concept, because usually it's they get out just in time before like the Earth blows up or something like that, or like an Armageddon type scenario, and I really like the positivity of it, and just the pretty much like I don't know if you would even say like the wonderment of it or something like that. You know what I mean? Just that it's a cool, different kind of spin, something you're not used to hearing these days. Like really anything freaking positive, to be truthful. When you go this and you just do, I'm sure you do probably just like scratch tracks and stuff like that. Now, do you just when you are mapping these songs out in your mind, do you have specific like your specific guitars in mind for certain parts and songs, or you just kind of just grab what's handy there?
Usually what I tend to do is for the more chunkier, heavier, distorted guitar parts, I tend to stay with my Les Paul that I have. It's usually a very reliable guitar for that. But when I used I wanted to make some of these more cleaner guitar parts, like the clean electric ones, I went and pulled out my old Strat and used that, because it had a much more thinner sound that made those tones a lot better. And I used to love doing this combination, and I did it this time for this record, where I would combine a clean electric with an acoustic guitar track together. That was something that Alex Lifeson used to do a lot, and did it on records like Hold Your Fire and stuff like that. And John Petrucci spoke in an interview once that he said that he had read about that Alex Lifeson that did that, and he started doing that. If you listen to the beginning of Pull Me Under, that's a great example of an electric guitar mixed with an acoustic guitar, right? And I like using those kind of tones as well. So there's a little bit of preparation when it comes to the actual recording end of it. When I do just the basic demo tracks of it, I just pick whatever. But when I have the final product in mind, I go ahead and pick out specific instruments for specific tones.
How long did this take you, ballpark, start to finish, to record this? Whether it be drums, vocals?
Usually when I'm doing something alone, which I usually do, it could take me maybe 4 months to do it, where I have everything done, mixed and mastered. I could probably do it quicker if I were to spend every single day on it for like 8 hours, but I find that to me doesn't really work well for me. I find that sometimes I get into this kind of groove where for 2-3 days in a row, I'll sit down for like 4 or 5 hours a day and work on something, and I'll give myself a little break away from it. And then I find what happens when I do that is I listen back to what I did, and I get re-excited about the music again, and I put that re-excited energy back into it. And it works really well for me that way. Because I find a lot of bands sometimes get burnt out. They're in the studio for so long, they're working on it for 10, 12 hours, and then, by the time they're on day 5 at, 12 hours, they're 60 hours in already, and they're like, I don't even want to hear another note of this damn song. You know what I mean? So I think that for me it works better this way. And plus, this album maybe took, I'd say maybe a couple of weeks longer, only because I had David Donnelly, a good friend of mine who's in England, who's a fantastic musician who's worked with tons of people, from Glenn Matlock of the Sex Pistols to, he's worked with Tony Visconti, who's done Bowie records and stuff like that. He's a great musician, great drummer, bass player, guitar player, everything. And I got him to play bass on one of the songs. So I needed to wait for him to sit down and, come up with his part and send it to me. And then I also had a fantastic musician named Joe Bailey, who's like the British equivalent to me, I guess. Like, he does the same thing. He does his own records, does everything himself, releases them himself, mix masters, everything. And I loved his couple of records he had done recently, and asked him if he would be interested in singing on this album, and he agreed because he loved my records. I know that he knew my albums, right? So, but he had some of them and he loved them, and decided that he'd love to check it out and to work with me. And we get along really well, and he did some fantastic singing on this album.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, you answered what was going to be my next question of how the collaboration came about with you working with David Donnelly and Joe Bailey. And I like it. I really do. I think it adds a totally different element to the songs, because it's and it's just, I think it's a great natural progression for your albums to collaborate with someone, and it throws that excuse me, that extra element in there that I really like. What's your thoughts, BC, on Joe Bailey and David Donnelly on this album? I know we discussed it a little bit. Actually, not even before we're recording this, just like since the album's come out.
I like not the dual vocalist, but it gives it more, I guess you would say, almost like a depth. But given it that's based on a story, it gives it.
You can have that other point of view.
The other point of view, and I think that breaks it up, and to me, it enlightens the song, I think, that much more better.
Yeah, I got to agree with you, because I think that's one of the things that I was hoping Joe would add to it, is because when you have a story, sometimes it's difficult for the listener to kind of follow the story when it's one voice doing all the storytelling. This way, when I was doing, when I was singing the parts that maybe the commander of the ship was, saying, and then he would respond with what the people from planet Earth would be saying, it kind of made it easier to follow the story.
Yeah, it was cool. I absolutely loved that element in there, and there's, quite frankly, not a skipper on this album. And what I like about this album as well is that you could pretty much, I think I would say probably with all of your releases, you could just put them all on a thing, hit shuffle play, and I think just the sound of them all, they're all different, but they're all similar, where it's the same artist, but like you're not totally lost in the music. You know what I mean? They're kind of, everything's kind of cohesive, I think. And I have not found a skipper song yet on any of the releases, and I just think it's fantastic. When you were recording these, what's the most difficult part for you in the whole process?
I think the part that's the most difficult for me is stepping out of being the only person involved in it. Let me explain that a little bit further. Is when you write all the music and you record and stuff, I mean, I have a huge vested interest in it, obviously, and I'm constantly working on stuff to make the record as good as possible. And you said, and I thank you for saying such a kind thing, that you haven't found a skipper yet. And I think that's for a reason, because even though some of these records have 6 songs or 5 songs, if you look at some of my files, well, one day I'll take a picture of it and show people, but for each album, I have a file on my computer, and there's more than 5 or 6 songs in there. There's usually about 11 songs written, and out of those, I pick the ones that I think are the best. And that, to me, is sometimes a difficult part, because I'll go and write them, record them, sing them, and before it was the singing that I found a little difficult, because that was my newest sort of instrument that I was tackling, was the voice, right? And to become confident in that took a little bit of time, but I'm I'm pretty confident in it now. I think I'm pretty good at what I do. I know what my strengths and my weaknesses are. But I think that what was the difficult part was finishing the record. Like, for example, Man of Science, Man of Dreams, the record before. I had finished writing it all, and then the part came where I was like, okay, what's gonna go on the record? Because there were quite a few songs on there, and there were quite a few songs I actually liked on this record, which is why we ended up with that B-side EP, the Lost Science Files EP that came out after, because I thought that those songs still deserved to be heard, right? So I think the most difficult part of making the records are what stays and what goes away. Now with this record, I had it a little bit simpler because I had a story to follow and I had to kind of write the songs around the lyrics. So in a way, I had to kind of make sure that the songs that I wrote for those parts were good enough. Otherwise, I would have to scrap the music and then write something else for the same set of lyrics.
Mark, I think we touched base by when you talked about your not later albums, past albums. To me, on this new album, I mean, the drum sound is even better than the last albums. I mean, I think you said it was a program you used?
Yes, Easy Drummer.
Really? I mean, that's just, I mean, they're really, to me, step up a notch on this album too, I think.
Yeah, when we get into we'll get into the songs on the second part of the show. I have quite a bit to say about the drums, and I really like it. Now, Mark, let me ask you. You talked about after all these albums, you kind of know your strengths and weaknesses. What do you feel that you could improve on for you, as whether it be in playing or songwriting or the production end? What do you think you could do to? Because I mean, I think each album is fantastic, but each one has been a step forward, whether it be production or sounds and instruments and stuff. What do you think? I don't even know how to put it. That you think you could improve on, like that would you look forward to, like when you finish something, what I could have done or what I'm gonna do on the next album that I didn't do or should have done on the one before.
Yeah, well, I know exactly what you're getting at, and I think that the easy answer and the first answer that comes to mind is everything, because I think once you stop learning and stop trying to push yourself to become better, then you kind of get to a point where you just stay the same and nothing changes, right? I like the fact that my things have gotten better. I appreciate that everybody kind of thinks that they're getting better and that the product and overall, like as far as the sound of it, I hate calling it a product. It sounds so commercial, but I mean like the record itself. I want it to sound better each time for the people who support me, my supporters, right? And so the production is a big thing for me. I mean, I love making records. I love the whole production end of things, and for me, I'm constantly, like every evening I'll go onto YouTube and try to find, the latest, production tricks videos or this and that, or some interview with a mixing engineer or a producer, and just trying to find little things that they talk about that make their records the way that they sound, and try to see if I can incorporate it into my own stuff, because I don't think that anybody who made a record has said that I think I've made the best record ever and it can't get better than this. Everybody usually says that they hope that he can do one better. And that's the challenge and the beauty of making music, I think, is that you want to make it, that much better than the last one. You want to keep upping the ante, And I think that I'm starting to get better at that as well. Like, I think the drums, I have a better understanding of what makes a drum sound big on a record and how to fit in the other instruments around it without killing the drums. How to place a vocal in without it getting killed and still have, a bunch of keyboard layers and stuff like that, because that's something that you need to learn. A lot of young bands that I hear that make records that have a bunch of instrumentation, things get lost in it because they don't understand yet. And I always try to explain it to them like this: mixing music is like a puzzle. If you don't put the pieces in properly, you don't see the final image. The drums have a certain spot in the image. The bass has a certain spot, and if you don't give them their own space, then you won't hear it properly.
That was a great answer for something I was not even sure you didn't even know what I was talking about, and that's exactly what I was kind of looking for. Like I said, I didn't even know what I was looking for when I asked the question, but that was it, because I like it, because it seems like as you progress, they get better and they sound better, and you kind of up the ante on yourself. I think when you put out a product, because I'm sure, and you were right. Like, no one ever thinks, what, this album is done. It's perfect. And I'm sure there's always something when you listen to it, you go back, I could have did this here, I should have did this there. But I'm sure there's a certain point where you just have to say, stop. Here's how it's got to go out, and it is what it is. And do you, like, make a middle note, like, okay, on the next one, do you, like, jot stuff down or just mental note that kind of stuff for future, recordings and stuff?
What I tend to do is I give myself first a general outline, because if you watched some of my Project Gemineye update videos on YouTube on my channel,
I watch them all.
I did mention on one of the last videos that I did that I said that I would probably start taking a look at doing book 2 by this summer. Now, I did that on purpose for myself, to kind of give myself a verbal reminder to not get tardy and work on it then. At first, when I start working on things, I don't usually give a deadline to myself. But once I get to about halfway through the recording of it, and I know things are going well and stuff like that, I do go on my channel and say, okay, I'm looking to have the record done by this time.
Right.
And I do that on purpose so that I work on it and get it done. I'm a kind of person, I feel, that works better under pressure than not, because then I kind of feel, okay, I can't sit around here and just waste time on something else. I really focus my efforts on what needs to be done, and I feel that the music in the end benefits from that.
Awesome. And I like how that you've been very consistent in releasing stuff, because even when you had the 2 albums out in 2017, but you had just Man of Science, Man of Dreams in 2018, but you had other stuff come out too. You had the Christmas stuff come out, and you did the
the Mark Anthony Kane, the Lower Third Collective.
Yeah, the Lower Third. Yeah, that one. I'm sorry, I couldn't just think of how exactly the words were in that.
That's okay.
But like, it wasn't like you were, you finished your third album, Man of Science, Man of Dreams, and just sat on your ass until 2019 to throw your next album out. So like, you've been consistently releasing material, and I like that too, because it keeps. I think it keeps your listeners and and I know you don't like the word, but I will use it here because I am one, fans. You keep them happy. I think that a lot of the other artists out there could kind of learn something from your process. I mean, I realize you're not out there touring and all that kind of stuff, but if you can make an album by yourself in 4 months in at your home studio and get it out, get a physical product out, digital product out, and then another month or two get the vinyl out. Like, why does it take some of these bands 4 or 5 years to do this, or they go in the studio and they're there for a year and a half? You know what I mean? I just I don't get that, but it's the music business for a reason, and whatever. But I just do like how you have consistently been putting product out there, and I appreciate it, because I'm always looking for something new. And with how things are now, there is so much stuff out there. I'm kind of contradicting myself that these bands take so long, but there's so much stuff out there now that there's always something new to listen to. But I just like how you've just been so consistent putting stuff out, and consistent quality stuff too, and they've just been getting better as you go along, and I appreciate that from a fan / supporter kind of angle. I really do. BC, you got anything else for Mark on the recording of this here? And
no, I was just going to say, I mean, you're talking about music parts and everything. I mean, to me, each album is constantly going uphill, improving on the past one. And the artwork, too, I think, is constantly... I mean, do you have any input on the artwork? Or do you just have your guy say, hey...
Basically, what I said to him this time is I go, here's the title of the album. And I just basically told him, I go, it's about the opposite of every other concept record you've ever heard. Instead of it something being bad, just think of a picture in your mind of Earth as a Paradise. That's all I told him, and he took it from there. I never tell him very much. I always just give him either the title, like for Man of Science, Man of Dreams, I just told him that, and that was it. I didn't tell him a single thing, just the title, and that's what he came up with. And I like doing it that way because I feel that the artist does his best work unhindered by outside influence.
I like that too, because you can tell it's the same guy
Yeah.
on all the albums, yet they're not the same. And that's actually, I like the, I of course always buy the CD. I do the digital download as well, but I always get the vinyl. And excuse me, I like the vinyl because in my advancing age here, it's easier for me to look at that big vinyl record than to put my reading glasses on and get my magnifying glass out to check out the lyric sheet and the actual art on the CD. So I do appreciate the vinyl version as well. But just very cool, and I like the packaging you do with your product that you put out, whether it be lyric sheets, and you talked about earlier about the digital download ticket, because you could have just simply just put a card in there with a code on it and been done with it. But it's that little extra stuff, I think, that is really, really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, being when I was young, I loved, getting those kinds of Kiss records with all those little trinkets and extras in it.
Yep.
That was always been the inspiration behind it. And, because I'm lucky that I have the people that I have helping me, like James McCarthy, who does the artwork for me. I mean, what a fantastic artist. And to know that he said to me that anytime I need a cover done, just to simply get a hold of him is such a relief to know that I can just say, hey, James, I'm going to need an album cover by, let's say, June of this year. And he'll say, Mark, no problem, I'll have it done for you. And to have this kind of a quality, I mean, I still look at it now, and believe it or not, I'm still, at this time, having, had the record out by November and having seen the album cover even before that, I can still look at this cover now and still find something new that I didn't see the last time I looked at it.
Yeah,
it's so detailed, some of this artwork, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and actually that's kind of what I was kind of getting at, that like it's always cool to have something like that you can always notice something different. And so and Mark, excuse me, God, I'm terrible tonight. I just it's a great album, and so I'm going to introduce our gem song really quick. We'll do our hidden gems. When we come back, we're going to go track by track with In the Year 3073, Book 1 with Mark. And the song that I'm going to do this week, I'm going to do a song from the second Lynch Mob album, the self-titled Lynch Mob album, since we got to see part of the thing that was the train wreck of Lynch Mob trying to do the Wicked Sensation album on the Monsters of Rock cruise. So I'm going to skip the Monsters of the Wicked Sensation album. So I'm going to pick a song from the second album from Lynch Mob with Robert Mason singing, and I'm going to pick the song Tangled in the Web from Lynch Mob second album, self-titled. Take it away. All right, we're back. We're going to do our hidden gems. And, BC, let's start with you today, buddy, because you look out of sorts, so I want to fuck with you a little bit. So go ahead.
Very unprepared today for the hidden gem, but I'm just going to promote the band I discovered last night. I guess band is a big word. It was only two guys that are called the Picture Trees. And it was just a guitar player and a drum player that had no cymbals. Just like, I'm sure there's a name for it. It just looked like a sheet of metal. Mm-hmm. And he had some other kind of thing he brought out from behind the drums. It was very, we got in and here they come. And you see a guy picks up a guitar and the drums and it's only two people there. I'm like, this could be different. I'm thinking.
BC thought he was in a coffee house.
Yeah, I'm thinking this is weird. So I'm like, God, this is gonna suck. And then they played the first song. And me and another guy that were there were just staring at each other like, what the hell is this? And by the third song, it was good. I mean, there was no bass, there's no cymbals, there's no just. The drummer was friggin' wild. He was like crazy.
Oh yeah.
He was breaking. He had in the sticks. I don't know. Again, there's probably a term for them, but they had like big red. They looked like huge matches.
Oh really?
Sticks. They had sticks and they had big red rubber mallets almost on the top of them. And he must have went through 4 or 5 pair of them, just snapping them.
Oh really?
He was crazy.
That's cool.
And there was really no guitar soloing in it. It was just. And the guys had a great voice. I mean, by the third, fourth song, I was like, wow, these guys aren't too bad. I was very surprised and overwhelmed. They won me over, I guess you would say.
Sweet.
They're from Germany. And
nice.
They do like 200 shows a year throughout the world. And
wow.
they told their story and their father. The drums kept falling. The one drum kept falling over, and the guitar guy's trying to pick up the drum. There was no roadies. There was just him.
Just them.
And their father. The singer's father was the sound guy / roadie. So he's back at the soundboard, and it's the three of them. And they travel the world and playing the stuff. So I gotta look and find their music. So all right. You get out there and check them out. The Picture Trees.
All right, cool. Mark, what do you got for us?
Well, I mean, I did mention earlier that I was working earlier on some research for a podcast I did, and my hidden gem is going to be, it's not so much of a hidden thing because I mean I'm sure people know about it, but I mean I've been, I'm gonna promote the Guns N' Roses Use Your Illusion 2 album. I mean I've been listening to that non-stop, and there's just so many great songs off of that record that I just had forgotten about altogether, And I'm gonna just say one of them just keeps popping into my mind all the time is a song called "Pretty Tied Up," which is such a fantastic song on that album. To me, that is a definite gem in my opinion.
All right, very cool. Yeah, I love that album too. "Locomotive" is my track on that album. Absolutely. Oh yeah, that song just absolutely freaking rips. Love it. Cool pick. Absolutely. My hidden gem is going to be. I'm going to revert back to the Monsters of Rock as well. One of the bands that we saw was Tokyo Motor Fist with Ted Poley, Steve Brown, Greg Smith, and I don't know the guy's name, but he was Billy Joel's drummer. That was the band, and even though Sonny Pooney hated them, Tokyo Motor Fist was freaking excellent. And I'm going to pick the solo album from Ted Poley, Beyond the Fade from 2016. Really cool melodic hard rock album. It's got some great stuff on it. Let's Start Something, Stars, A Perfect Crime, Higher, Where I Lost You. Just a good, solid hard rock album. BC, you know that album. You have, I think you have the CD too, don't you?
Believe I do.
Because I know I have it, so it's really good. So check that out. So for our hidden gems this week, I have Beyond the Fade from Ted Poley from 2016. That's the album with the astronaut on it, yeah. The spaceship guy on it. And for Mark, I have Guns N' Roses Use Your Illusion 2. And he has the song Pretty Tied Up picked out, which is very cool. And BC is a band that he saw last night opening up for British Lion called the Picture Trees. So check those guys out, Guns N' Roses, Ted Poley, and the Picture Trees. I'm very interested in them now, BC. I'm gonna have to scout them guys out.
Same here.
Yep. Okay, so let's get back into Projekt Gemineye. In the year 2073. Oh, I put 2020, 3023 on there. No wonder. But it is the year 3073, Book 1. I have my notes on this song here. Let me, BC, do you want to go for, you have your notes on the songs, or do you want to go first, or?
Yeah, no, man.
Go ahead. Let Your Spirit Fly is the first opening track on this album. It's excellent.
Excellent track. I mean, to me, as soon as you hear it, it's the longest track on the album. Just a tad over 10 minutes, which is cool. But I mean, first thing you hear when I heard this is like, wow, this song. I mean, like I said, every album continually gets better and better and better. The guitar, I like the guitar. To me, the guitar is heavier on this album. Maybe it's just me. It just seems like more the heavier. And we talked about it before, where Joe's vocals gives it this whole different dimension to the song, which breaks up a lot. To me, the solo in it is very melodic. And then right after that, it kicks in the keyboards on his album, just again bringing it a notch higher. And I like the cymbal use. So, I mean, the way the cymbals sound after the solo and key solo. And that's why I was asking you about that. What you do for the drums on it. And overall, the drum sound is, I think, the best on this album.
Yeah. For me, I like the beginning because you have that kind of sounds like a little like a spaceship, maybe even just the travelers like coming in. It kind of sounds like a ship landing in the beginning before the guitars start. It's got like a little mellow start, and then you get the dual guitars playing. Just kind of has a priest or maiden feel to it. The way they're just kind of set together there, and the travelers they've arrived back home. It's got really crunchy guitars, and the drums are like right out front. And when you get into the vocals, it kind of sets the tone for them returning to Earth. I think kind of like welcome back, and then like 2 minutes and 34, Joe Bailey boom comes in, and it's like welcome home, my friends. I friggin' love that. It's just like this one of them parts. I'm just like, oh my god, that's just like gives me that catch my breath factor. Just when he starts that, it adds such a different element to the tone of the album actually. And the lead guitars are really crisp and clear. Mark's vocals, I think your vocals were very like heartfelt on this song, Mark. I really thought they were a great contrast with Joe's. I think they worked really well together. And then there's kind of like a little lag in the song with the tom-toms playing. I like it. It's just like a quick little pause in the song. The solo is really good. I like the tempo change in it. But then it goes into like a keyboard synthesizer solo in it. But then the drums really kick up. BC, I have it there too, with the crash cymbals crashing with the beat. I fucking absolutely love that. The next verse, the solo picks right back up, then back to Joe Bailey singing. But I like that part when Joe's singing, you could hear Mark singing underneath that, and I liked how it's nice and layered there. And then you do get that acoustic guitar sound in there, like around 8 minutes. But Mark, let me just throw this out there. If my thinking is correct on this, the way this song ends, like zips me right back to Cygnus X Book 1 at the end of Farewell to Kings. Mm-hmm. I mean, that, yeah, I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, that's like, puts me right to that album, because you kind of get that, like, I think I said it when we did that album. I think it has kind of like a floating vibe to it. I was like, holy crap. And I'm like, I know that's Rush, but I couldn't quite place what it was. So I went back and I thought it might have been on 2112, but it was on Farewell to King. So I went back and I did a little research on that one. And for Magic World on the next song, and I like how the end of the first song kind of floats right into the second song, and the keyboard and the guitar mix on that, like, that puts me right to Queensryche Sweet Sister Mary. Mm-hmm. I'm like, holy crap, that no, just kind of like that part when you hear the rain in the background, like, it puts me right to that. Then the crunchy guitars kick in, and even at that point, it still continues with the Queensryche vibe for me. I like that era, that Mindcrime, early, like maybe just before, like, Empire type things, and there's some really, really interesting drum fills on this song, very cool. And I think lyrically, for me, this song is like shock and awe, like, in a good way for the Travelers. They're just like, holy crap, everything is like good and everything is not what we thought it at all was going to be. There's a time change with the synth solo, and that was kind of an unexpected turn in the song for me. I was waiting for a guitar solo in it, and then it was turned around, and then the guitar solo came in after that, and it was really good. The bass is really prominent and stands out, and actually the bass in that song, the end of that song, reminds me of the end of Red Barchetta when you get the do-do-do-do, when he does that. Like towards the end, it definitely throws me into that, and then back to the chorus, and it closes out. Magic Girl, what do you think, BC?
Again, I'm loving, like you said, the guitar sound and the drum sound. To me, just continually draws me in. And I think you might have touched on this before, Mark, how nothing oversteps each other. Like the bass, the guitar, drums, keys, they all blend perfectly together. Nothing's being lost or overpowered. And I love the guitar sound on this. I love it on the whole album. And I find, I think you just touched base. I wrote down, I find myself following the lyrics more in this album than any of the other ones. I'm always a music guy first. I don't know why. But
right.
But especially on this album, I've been concentrating on the lyrics more.
Yeah, and Mark, I apologize. I should have let you chime in after we got done talking about each song. Are any of our synopsises like what you were thinking when you were doing these songs?
Well, I smiled at the fact that you mentioned at the end of "Let Your Spirit Fly" the Cygnus X1 thing, because when I was actually recording that part, it very much reminded me of that as well. That kind of solitary guitar at the end that just kind of resolves the song at the end. And I always thought that was an impactful way to end a song. So it definitely was probably lurking in the back of my mind when I was, recording "Let Your Spirit Fly." And I think that, your description of it is pretty accurate. Like that keyboard at the beginning to symbolize the incoming ship, and then the music that was in afterwards that, signified the wonder of the crew when they saw how Earth was now and stuff like that. I mean, everything has to translate not only lyrically but musically. You have to get that feeling too, that that there's some wonderment or excitement in the people when they come out of the ship. And you said that you thought that vocally that I had some more emotion in it this way, and that's one thing that I kind of wanted to make sure I did. Especially since I was trying to tell a story, I didn't want the vocals to seem flat at all. I wanted them to have some emotion in it as well. Like when that one part that I sing where I talk about seeing the oceans and the stuff like that, and how the planet looks, I wanted to make sure that came across very clearly, right? I wanted to make sure that when I talked about how the oceans looked, or how the oceans blue and stretched for miles, the forest
right.
full of life, I wanted that to be like when the science officer sees that, like just the awe that person has in them to see that.
Heavy Hearts, what do you got for us, BC?
Heavy Hearts. The guitar, opening guitar. I love the heaviness. So that's a hint towards you, Mark. More heavy guitar.
Yes.
But again, I find myself falling more for the story of the whole, which is very unlike BC. If anybody knows me, when it comes to music, I'm always music up front, and the lyrics always fell in
behind.
And usually, but I find myself, especially with this album, really following the lyrics.
Yeah, and actually, like my very first thing, I'm like crunchy guitars from the get-go on this song. But I like the keyboards, the organ type thing in the back. It kind of gives it. It's more subtle, I think, in this song, and it's got a Mr. Crowley kind of feel to it, like underneath what's going on in the song, and great drum fills from the beginning. And I find myself getting sucked into the story of this also, because this is explains kind of why they got together to leave the planet and the world was coming apart. But the bass is really out front on this song as well. And the guitars, it's like one of them, what I call the takeoff solo. And the guitar harmonies are cool in the intro, and I just love that there's contrasting keyboard solos along with the guitar solo. Sometimes the keys are first and then the guitar. Sometimes they're in reverse. I like how it's not the same on each thing, and I love, and that's one of my main things that I've always loved about the Projekt Gemineye albums is the use of the keyboards and the synthesizers, and they're not overused. They totally fill the song out, and they're their own kind of entity on these albums, and I really like that about it. But the riff underneath the keyboard solo is heavy as hell on this song. It's like bang your head, crunchy riff on underneath that keyboard solo. I love it, and I really like that there's not really one thing that's overplayed on this album, even though there's some really, really cool drum fills throughout this album. There's nothing that's like, wow, that's like does not fit. You don't have a Frankie Bannon, come on, feel Illinois, girls rock your boy, you know what I mean? It's nothing like that. It's just something that's tasteful within the song. You know what I mean? It's nothing that's like crazy, and I really like that, and I think it's really cool. Anything else on that one, Mark?
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say this song I purposefully made the music more heavier on it because I thought the topic was pretty heavy as far as what he was talking about, because in the verse he talks to the people, those two guys that he meets at the bar, saying, the reason why we left is because, the seas were rising, the lands were flooding, all the crops were destroyed, the summer times became so hot it was unbearable, and the winters were like completely freezing, so it seemed like, because it seemed like the people at the bar that he met up with were almost questioning why you would leave this place the way it was then, right? Like how the way they have it at this time, it almost seems impossible to them to believe that anybody would want to leave. But he's trying to explain to them, well, it wasn't like that when we were here or when my ancestors were here. They told us stories of complete utter disaster, right? So that's what I want to try to get across, not only lyrically but musically in the heaviness.
Right, and I think it absolutely came through. That definitely. Children of Hope, BC.
Children of Hope. Here's like a slow song for them. We start off with the little piano kicking in, and then to me the chorus stands out. To me that catches my ear, and like I said, there's not a skipper on this album, and this one just the chorus sticks out in my mind.
Yeah, I like the piano at the beginning. It's it's got like a little mid-tempo guitar run at the beginning there that is like very melodic, very once again back to the soft and heartfelt vocals. I love this song because I remember I think Mark sent me this song during the recording at some point, and I think you sent me a couple songs, I think.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, like Children of Hope, that needs to be a single. I think that would be a song that would hit with anyone, whether in the context of the album or just as a standalone song. I love the I think that the chorus is just absolutely amazingly melodic. The background vocals with Joe Bailey, and this is the song that David Donnelly plays bass on. It sounds really good. It's not overplayed at all. And then there's like a piano break towards the end that for me it kind of has a Guns N' Roses Estranged or November Rain kind of feel to it. It's not very long, but I could feel that influence in there. And that's another thing I like about the album. Like I can pick out these influences, but they're not copies of anything. But you get that vibe from Mark's different influences on this album. And whether I'm just picking it out in my head or it was actual something that I'm sure it's something that probably just automatically comes out. But I can definitely associate a lot of different like elements from different bands within this stuff, and I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, well, I have to agree that there is obviously, an influence of Guns N' Roses in my stuff as well, because I think Axl is a pretty underrated piano player in my opinion, and I've always liked his kind of playing, and I like it because of the fact that he has kind of this kind of subtle approach to it. It's not, over the top like a Rick Wakeman who would throw in like, thousands of notes into it and make it so, grandiose. I mean, this song was about, the generation there that is there to remind the people of the planet how good they have it. Their reasoning for being there is always being kind of a mystery. Like, if the world is so fantastic, why would you have these people marching around with signs saying "Never forget"?
Right.
Right. So, and that's something that gets touched on in book 2, right?
Oh, cool.
But it is sort of a softer song because the science officer who goes and talks to these people, it's a wonder to this person saying, well, why are you like this? Look at this world around you. It's fantastic here. What is there to even, complain about? Right. And then that's how it's kind of approached. And musically, I think I really like this song the way I wrote it because I didn't want to make it too over the top musically. I wanted the message to be pretty strong and lyrically and vocally, and I think Joe really knocked it out of the park. And I think David added a very nice melodic bass line to this song.
Absolutely. Keepers of the Past, BC, what do you got first?
I love this song. Just love the way the bass and drums kick it off, and it has that funkiness to it. I don't know if that's what you're trying to go for there, but I get that funk feel in the beginning of it, and just the way everything kicks in. Again, Joe's vocals on this sets this song apart.
Yeah,
and then the solo kicks in. I mean, I love the solo, and again, I can't stress enough how much I love the drum sound on this song.
Yeah, I really like this song, and actually, it's funny because like the very first thing I have written down about this is "Bring Out the Bass." It's got like a Dream Theater feel in the beginning, I think, and actually, the keyboard start in this song I think has like an ELO feel to it. I don't know if that's even because I'm not even a big ELO fan, but like I kind of that one song All Around the World, I think it is like that one keyboard part in the start has that kind of feel of it to me. More Joe Bailey vocals, and the feel of this song is excellent. The lead breaks are so rocking, but they're so smooth. They're almost like Carlos Santana-ish smooth in this song. I really think it's cool. Again, the drum fills are really good, and it's cool hearing Joe and Mark go back and forth on the vocals, like kind of like a Gene Paul kind of thing, singing one part, singing another part. I like that. But then there's the time change for the solo has got a few, I think, like jazz-like drum breaks in it, like kind of totally different pace of the song, and then it gets into a total jazz breakdown, I think, for the rest of the solo. And I was like, holy shit, when I heard that. And I literally, the first time I listened to that song, I paused it and I went back and listened to it again because it was so different and so cool on the album. Excellent. And the guitar parts and the end of the solo are excellent. I love the keys under the vocals in the last part, and it just builds the song right to the end. I think it's really like a stunning piece of music. I don't think I've ever described anything that way, but it's just that song I think has so many elements in it, and they just fit so well. It's such a diverse song throughout the song, but it fits perfectly.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting. The whole beginning part with that drum and bass thing. When I thought of it, I right away knew it was a strong idea and part. And the guitar that I put over top of it, as soon as I played it, I stopped myself, put the guitar down, grabbed my other guitar. I have a Dwight Jackson guitar with a Floyd Rose whammy bar on it. Because right away when I heard that section, I thought Alex Lifeson, Grace Under Pressure era, and I thought that kind of the picked out chords with the whammy bar in there. That's exactly what I was trying to go for. Was that kind of Rush 1984 kind of guitar part in there, and I think it turned out really nicely. And the middle part, that whole jazzy break part, was something I thought would be good to put in there because this whole part of the story where they go and try to find these keepers of the past. Everything that they kind of start discovering was a little bit different than what they expected. So why not put in something different musically
Right.
in there to represent that, right? And I thought that, that was something that would be unexpected to most people who are listening to the song. Like a few minutes earlier, you would never expected that break to appear in it. So I thought that it translated the message I was trying to put in about the song.
I like it. I really like it. No Turning Back, the lone instrumental on the album. I love it. Dual guitars, and this song is just ripping. I would say probably the most rocking song front to back in your whole catalog. There's some great shredding there, some really great harmonies, and I think it's an excellent way to end the album. It's a shorter song, and it's just like a big boom exclamation point on the album. And it's one of them things, I've always said it before, you want to listen to an album where A, it leaves you wanting more, B, you want to flip it over and start listening to it right away again, and that is the perfect exclamation point for this album. Love it.
Bam, I have to agree with you on that one. We talk about everything blending together, and this is just a cranking tune where everything blends together fine, and it just finish the album.
The first of the night, wow.
First of the night.
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought about how I was going to end this. And because in the story, they discover some things that were very shocking to them as far as the development of the planet. I wanted to put in something very intense more at the end to kind of represent the whole discovery of the stuff that they found. And really, I wanted it to be not too long. I wanted it to just kind of just end with that kind of low droning note at the end there, and just kind of leave it that way, in the sense that I'm going to start book 2 with that note. It's going to start book 2 with that same droning note.
Cool.
And it'll begin from there to kind of have that connection to it. And, there's the story from there is going to take some, interesting twists and turns. But I almost looked at this song as almost like the running credits song for the end of the story.
I like that. Absolutely. Yeah, great. My overview here, I'm going to give it to you real quick here. Great fourth album. It's got all the great elements that the Projekt Gemineye fans and supporters have been used to. Heavy guitars, synths and keyboards, vocal harmonies, great guitar harmonies, great vocals, awesome drum and bass combos. Absolutely love it. The added element with Joe Bailey on vocals gives the album an extra boost and a feel that is and it's not overused either. I think if you used like Joe on every song, it'd be kind of like but I think it's used just enough. The production is very well produced. There's a great balance of all the instruments used all over the album, and I am absolutely looking forward to book 2. And I love the story as well. I love science fiction shit. I think it's great, and I just love the positivity of it.
What do you think, BC?
I love this album. I mean, like I said, anybody who's been following your albums, this is just continually grows. And musically, I mean, to me, it's the drum sound. I can't stress that enough. The heavier guitar, I mean, it really sucked me in.
Right, because like we honestly, BC and I have talked about this album since it came out several times, and we were both kind of like, what do you think? You're like, I don't know, what do you think? You're like I think it's great. And he's like, well, so do I. Because I don't know if we were like kind of afraid that the other guy wasn't going to like it or whatever, you know what I mean? It was kind of one of those things like, well, I don't know, well, you try it. Well, I'm not going to try it. You try it.
You try
it. But it was really cool. And speaking of, you did mention that you were hoping to have book 2 finished by summertime or the end of summertime. However, for everybody out there listening, Mark has, I don't know, we can call this maybe a premiere or an announcement about another project. And I'll let you get right into it, Mark. Okay,
so me and Joe Bailey had such a good time working together on this Projekt Gemineye album that we kind of, continued talking to each other afterwards and talked about the possibility of, doing a separate project together. And he loved the idea, and I loved it as well, the idea of getting together and writing a record together. Now, we never said anything about it to anybody because we were, I think, kind of cautious about it, because we're both the same type of people. We like having, everything under our control, writing, recording, mixing, mastering. And sometimes they say when you put two of the same people in the same room together, it could be a big disaster, right? So we kind of said nothing about it and just decided, okay, let's start working on writing some songs together. And we took a very different approach to the way we wrote. The way we wrote songs was like this. Each of us were going to write 3 or 4 songs, and we would start writing them, and we would write it to a point and stop. So each of us ended up writing like about 3.5 minutes of music. And then we would send it to the next person, and he would finish the song. And whether that meant taking a part that I had already written and put it in later again, or just writing old new parts of music and then just continuing with it, just his own music, or intertwining bits of my own music and then his own music with it together, there was no rules. We just said, here's my first half of it, you finish the end of it. And we did that with each other's music. So he would write 3 songs, write 3 minutes of it, I would conclude it. I would write 3 songs, 3 minutes, he would conclude it. And we ended up with some really fantastic songs. Now, the differences between the two of us are apparent in the sense that he loves keyboards, he loves doing orchestrations of strings and orchestra and stuff like that. He's very much into movie music as well and stuff like that. And he's just a great singer as well on top of it, and a fantastic bass player. So on this album, he did the vocals, bass guitar, and 90% of the keyboards. I did all the guitars, most of the drumming on it, and just on all the guitar soloing and all the keyboard solo parts I did, like the Moog solos and stuff like that, I would play. So we had definite plan of what we wanted to do, and now that we have the whole album written and we're just working on vocals and lyrics now, we thought it might be a good time to announce that we're going to, announce this band. And the band is going to be called The Dark Monarchy. The spin on that name is that Joe lives in the United Kingdom, right? And Canada still having ties back to the Queen, we thought it might be an interesting spin to have it, to have monarchy in the name, right? So, and the Dark Monarchy sounds cooler than just the monarchy, right? So we decided to call it that, and we will have I think either a 6 or 7 song album out probably sooner than later.
Excellent. I was very excited when Mark kind of clued me in on this was, and I appreciate it and feel honored that you would make the announcement of this project on our podcast, and I thank you for that, and thank you for the trust in us and the trust in me to have this information and keep it and we've kept it within the guys in the podcast here, and it's just another great thing to look forward to.
Great. I'm very glad that you guys are happy that I shared this information with you. And I mean, I couldn't have thought of better guys to share it with, because I mean, you guys have always been very supportive of Projekt Gemineye as far back as the very beginning. And I mean, I remember meeting you guys at the Rockin' Pod, the very first one, and talking about it. And we even decided back then that we would, hook up and talk and, maybe do something on each other's, podcasts. And, it's turned out to be a great relationship with you guys. And I thought that you guys were very deserving of having it announced on your fantastic podcast.
Actually, absolutely. We totally appreciate your trust in our, your more of your friendship than anything. Yeah. And we do consider you a friend, and we consider you an integral part of our podcast, whether it be just shooting the shit with you on Messenger, or talking about Projekt Gemineye, or Rush and having you on the Rush episodes. We did the vinyl stuff. I think it's been a great relationship from the get go, and we're happy to have you as part of our podcast.
And the vinyl knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I learned so much about vinyl just from you alone.
Thanks, man. Well, I mean, I'm happy to be on here, and like I said before, and I'll say it again, anytime you guys want me on for anything, I'm always available for you guys. I mean, I am pretty busy, but I'll tell you, I'll always make some time for you guys, because you guys have been very supportive, and I appreciate that, and I always like to, help out those people that help me out.
That's awesome. We appreciate it. Mark, so give everybody out there the information on where they can find Projekt Gemineye, how they can order the CD or the vinyl that's coming out, and it will be yellow vinyl, correct?
Correct.
Which is going to be
cool. So basically, the best thing to do as far as getting information, if you go on YouTube and just put in Projekt Gemineye, you'll find my channel on there, and there's always some updates going on there. As far as Facebook goes, there's a Projekt Gemineye group and a page. There are two separate things on there, and they're kept up quite regularly. There's always some sort of information every other day or so on there. And there's a group of great people, including, Steve and BC and those guys on there. I always find that the one thing I'm happy about that group is that there's never been an incident at all on this page. Everybody's been so cool to one another and supporting each other, and it's such a great little group of people. I mean, I have 200 people on there, and I kind of like it that way. I don't know how I would feel if I had like 8,000 people on there, because this way it feels much more personable. I know a lot more of these people on a more than just a hey, how you doing basis. So, and I like that about it. So if you feel like joining the group, feel free to do so. There's always room for more. After me just saying that, there is room for more people, of course. And as far as buying or supporting the Projekt Gemineye releases, just go to Bandcamp, and in the search, just put in Projekt Gemineye, and project is spelled Projekt, and Gemineye is spelled Gemineye, like the I. And you'll find me. I'm the only one there called Projekt Gemineye, and you'll find everything there: all the singles, all the EPs, all the albums. The first album is still available on CD, but the vinyl has been long sold out. Brand new Data Second record is still available on CD. But the vinyl is nearing the end. I think I'm down to about 10 copies left, and that's it for that. And Man of Science, Man of Dreams has CD available, and that one's also getting under 30 copies left, so that's going to be gone probably sooner than later. And this new record, the yellow vinyl version, has not yet come out, but we're in pre-order stage right now. If you go onto the site, you can order everything right from there. It's easy peasy, and if you get in on it now, it'll be a lot cheaper than if you were to order it later, because I have distributors that'll send it out within the United States and within UK and Europe, and that saves me a lot on shipping, which in turn saves you a lot of money as well. So if you're going to do it, grab it now.
Awesome. BC, you have a little announcement to make. Go ahead.
I have to make an announcement. Here I am with our gym tonight. I'm promoting these guys after seeing them last night. Maybe I should check my notes before opening my mouth. I was calling them the Picture Trees. The name of the band is actually the Picture Books.
Okay.
No wonder I couldn't find nothing online for these guys today, because I didn't look at my notes I took last night on my phone, which you and Dylan should be proud of.
I know. I've been drilling you to do that.
During that episode, I just happened to look at my notes.
Now you just have to look at them after you put them down.
So it's the Picture Books.
Oh, very nice.
They're classified. Yeah, they're classified as a German alternative rock / blues rock duo. Check them out. I mean, they got some albums out and EPs and shit. Very cool. But
awesome.
You people would be looking for the Picture Trees and be like, what the hell is he talking about? There's no such thing. It's the Picture Books.
The Picture Books. Okay, very cool. And Mark, give everyone the lowdown on your podcasts, and we'll do a little final words around the table here, and we'll wrap up.
All right. So I'm involved in a few different things. Mainly, I'm involved in the KISS FAQ podcast, which talks about all things KISS. It's very easy to find that. They're on, we have our podcasts once a week, and they're on everywhere, iTunes, and all the places that you find podcasts. We're there. We also just started another podcast, which I mentioned earlier, called Hey, It's Rock and Roll. Look, It's Rock and Roll podcast. If I get the title right, and that's new, and we're on all the other formats as well, including Spotify, which is odd that it hasn't been bumped, considering that everybody else's podcasts seem to have gotten bumped.
Yeah, we're still hanging tough there too.
Yeah, so that's good. I also do a Yes podcast called the Yes Music Podcast. Now that's a little bit more selective. We're on iTunes and a few other spots, but we're a little bit more not as out there as the other ones. But with that said, we have a very, very strong and large following on that podcast. There's Kevin Mulrine who does that is a pretty well respected podcaster in the community of the podcasters, especially in the UK. So he has quite the following, and it's a great podcast if you like Yes and all things dealing with Yes, whether it's ex-members or people related to them, whether it's producers or stuff like that. We cover the gambit on there. So if you like Yes, might want to check that out. And then again, I just do my own thing with the Projekt Gemineye updates on YouTube.
All right, very cool. Final thoughts, BC.
Again, I'm looking forward to the vinyl coming out because, like you said, it's easier to look at. And I think Mark said it. You find something different every time you look at it, and I'm excited for that, and I'm excited for part 2. And this is what, I don't know, you want to be interested in something. You want to look forward to something, and this is what Mark does with his Projekt Gemineye. It makes you want the next step, and that's what I'm waiting for, the next step.
Yeah. Once again, Mark, thank you very much for coming on here and sharing Projekt Gemineye with us, and talking about it and sharing your new project, the Dark Monarchy, with us and our listeners. First, kind of an exclusive kind of deal here, and like I said, we value your friendship and your knowledge, and your music is fantastic. And BC, you're totally correct that it's always cool. It's soon as you get the next Projekt Gemineye thing, you're like, okay, well, what's next? What's coming up next? But there's enough of a catalog now where you can go back and say, I haven't listened to An Ordinary Day in a while. I go back, throw that on, and then you totally, didn't forget how good it was, but you're like, wow, that is, it takes you back to when you first listened to it. And, like I said, thanks again for coming on. I know you're extremely busy. You got 100,000 things going on, and we talked before the podcast. This was actually the third podcast that you recorded this evening, I believe. And we appreciate your time, and thanks a lot for coming on, Mark. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. Like I said, I love coming on here, and will continue to do so as long as you continue to ask me.
Absolutely. So thanks, BC. Like I said, first time BC and I recorded since we got back from the Monsters of Rock cruise, and great to have Mark on again. And thanks for everybody out there for listening. Give us a share, give us a like on Facebook. If you would be so kind to give us a review on iTunes or Podchaser, a 5-star would be fantastic. It helps us get out there a little more. Tell your rocker friends about us, and help spread the word with us, because we have a great time doing this. We love bringing you guys different episodes every week. And thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we will see you next time, and there definitely will be a next time.